Hello, everybody, and welcome to round 7 of the 2022 GP4 Offline Championship. Of course, a week later than billed due to snow reasons on New Year's End. We are here at the Circuit de Barcelona, Catalonia in Montmeló for the running of the Spanish Grand Prix. I am JW97, and I'm joined today by F2 commentator Rob.
Hello, good to see you, everybody. It's been a while since we've last had some racing action, but yeah, we're back, and this time let's get the Barcelona weekend underway.
Yep, indeed, and hopefully it should be a very interesting one indeed, especially even with the chicane that we've had in the last chicane. Of course, George Roke's favourite chicane, if you remember the commentary from the highlights, of course. But anyway, we're about to get underway once the screen comes up on the screen. We haven't got the screen share just yet on our end at the moment, so that's that. Yeah, I don't have the screen share at the moment. That's why that's why we haven't seen what the weather looks like. From the looks of it, it looks like it's going to be dry for the session. It is dry for the session. We've only just now got our screen share, so apologies for that. But anyway, the first one on track is Bartra's class. Of course, the tyres we're using here for the Spanish Grand Prix is the soft tyres. So for the first time since the first race of the season, we're back to using the soft tyres for this one. It's had a little bit of a 6-race break, but here we are nonetheless. And coming into Barcelona, you have to obviously rewind back to 2 weeks ago for the German Grand Prix. And Evan Berner, of course, made it 3 wins in a row. And coming into this race, he does have a chance to equal a record that... He does have a chance to equal a record that has been around in the top class for the last 11 seasons. He could get a record equaling 4th win in a row if he wins here this week.
Yeah, but that's easier said than done.
Yes, indeed, because there have been plenty of other people who have done it, who have tried to emulate that in the past. Will Neller being one, of course. I think Jay McKenzie was another one at one point, but both of them failing to achieve that. And, well, that was pretty much that way. I think Florian Volker also tried to achieve it as well at one point, but he also failed as well. Because the only person who has ever achieved 4 wins in a row back in 2011 was, of course, James Willows when he was driving for Red Bull. Did it at Hungary, Belgium, Italy, and, of course, Singapore. Singapore being the most notable, given that he actually pitted on the penultimate lap of the race to ensure he had enough fuel to get to the end of the race. And he had enough of a gap to stay in front of his then teammate, Florian Volker, the man, of course, who would go on to eventually win the title in 2011. And oddly enough, that would actually be James Willows' final victory in the top class as well, the one in Singapore. So who knows really if Evan Byrne can achieve it here. Of course, he does have some very good history around here at Barcelona, as Rob is rattling his crisp packet, it seems. But
Yeah, sorry.
as 20.2 in the first sector there, but yeah, obviously Byrne has got some good success around here in the past. He won here in both 2011 and 2012, both times driving for McLaren, and so he's obviously got some very good history around this circuit, but whether he can achieve 4 wins in a row is going to be another question. He has got some contenders though who could stop him from doing that, as we see Evan Byrne trying to overtake an Aston Martin there, going through into that corner. But yeah, overall, Rob, it was a very strategic. It was a very good strategic race for Evan at the German Grand Prix, despite the fact that Franco Lopez was chasing him all the way at the end.
Well, Byrne just had the pace, and Red Bull were fastest there in testing, and they had the pace on race day, and that was enough for Byrne to carry on to the win.
It was indeed. Lopez, of course, just missing out on his his third victory of the season, of course, as he was looking very quick, but just the strategy in the end just didn't work out, and he just didn't really have enough time to catch back up to Evan Byrne. He was close in the end. I think it was under a second in the end between the pair of them in that race, but just not enough for Lopez to get hold of a victory that day. As so far it's a Mercedes 1-2 as we're getting the early lap times on the board, but they both get beaten quickly by George Roke, a man who comes into this race still carrying a bit of bad memories from this race last season. Not in a negative way in terms of him crashing out or anything, but the fact that he was battling for the lead of this race and he lost the lead on the last lap to Jake Galloway, and as a result, Roke is still yet to win a race in the Red Bull, and well, he's still, he's still craving for that victory at the Red Bull at the moment.
Yeah, indeed, and you have to wonder how long it's going to take for him.
Yeah, indeed. Especially the last time he won a race, of course, was the 2020 German Grand Prix when he was at Racing Point. Of course, moved to Red Bull with hoping a chance that he could maybe challenge for the championship. And whilst this season has gone off to a good start for him, he's still yet to get that victory. And it's all right having consistency, but sometimes you can't rely on it too much because really victories are the way to go, really, when you want to go and win a championship, of course. As we ride on board with Miklos Gau, who was, it's safe to say, in the last race at Germany, a huge superstar, because it's ironic that he's currently up in fourth at the moment in this session, because that's where he ended up finishing, of course, at Hockenheim 2 weeks ago. And, well, a very, very good race for Miklos, considering that he had a little bit of a bad patch at the beginning of the season.
That's some very good redemption there.
Indeed so, as Joseph Willows is currently getting stuck behind an Aston Martin at the moment, currently in P8. Now, we should point out as well, going into the qualifying session, of course, but we do have a grid penalty for this race, that being David Cupot, the man we're actually looking on the screen right now. He's got a 5-place grid penalty for a crash he caused at the German Grand Prix with Amelia Wilson. So wherever he ends up in qualifying a little bit later on, he will drop 5 places back. And so it'll be interesting to see. Of course, it's the second race in a row that AlphaTauri have ended up with a grid penalty, because, of course, 2 weeks ago in Germany, Miklos Gau, despite his very strong result, did also suffer from a grid penalty himself for an accident that he caused at the San Marino Grand Prix with Chris Chatfield. So, really, AlphaTauri are not doing themselves any favours at the moment when it comes to grid penalties in 2022.
Yeah, it's true. And now Chatfield tries to make a move on the Aston Martin, but he can't get him to turn 4.
Yeah, it seems the Aston Martins are causing a little bit of traffic problems around here at Catalonia, and that could be something to keep an eye on, especially in the race and maybe even qualifying as well, because I think traffic is going to be a big thing around here at Barcelona during qualifying, as David Cupok is going to cross the line, doesn't improve, and stays in P7 at the present moment. But as Cupot now makes his way into the first corner, of course, as a result of Byrne taking victory last time out at the German Grand Prix, it now means he now takes the lead in the championship for the first time since 2011, of course. He leads the championship by 4 points out of Armar Carr. Carr, of course, like with George Rowe, still yet to get a victory this season. And, well, I think it's safe to say Carr is definitely desperate to try and get a victory in 2022.
Well, he's been very consistent so far this season, but just lacked that winning edge. He's going to try to find it for sure.
Yep, of course, he has won here in the past, of course, in 2017 and, of course, in 2020 as well. 2017 he did so with Red Bull, and 2020 he did it with Mercedes, of course. And so, obviously, it also has some good memories around this track as well. It's the track that he has been very strong at in the past, so he'll be looking to see if he can replicate that here this week, as Chatfield finally gets by on the Aston Martin there. Macho, meanwhile, has gone up into 11th place in the Haas as Carl gets by on the Renault there. Well, I think that's Roman Quag that we're getting by. And, well, for Renault, it's safe to say the last 2 races for them have been a complete disaster for them. No points in the last 2 races. Of course, Quag and Perinen were involved in an accident that George Roque obviously got caught up in. And once again ended up with 0 points on the board and losing track to both Red Bull and Mercedes in the Constructors' Championship. And especially for Perinen as well, Rob, as he comes here, which is obviously his home Grand Prix, of course, this week. The last 3 races he'll want to put on the back burner because he hasn't scored points for the last 3 races. I think Rob kind of cut out there as he was...
Yeah, sorry, I didn't know really what to say, but Pernian, his luck isn't exactly so good, and he'll be hoping he can turn things around at his home race.
Indeed so, as Cupot now then just coming around the left-hander there, as he's currently in 7th place, 5th and 7th so far for the 2 AlphaTauri drivers as he makes his way through into turns 6 and 7 now then on the racetrack, as we have just over 31 minutes to go in this session. But yeah, it was not the best of races for Renault, of course, and they'll be determined to try and add some points on the board here at Barcelona. Ferrari had a decent race, or did they have a decent race? Well, in fact, they did get ahead of Haas in the Constructors' Championship last time out at Germany, but both teams now find themselves tied on points, with Ferrari only being ahead due to the fact that Galloway got a podium at the Chinese Grand Prix a few races back. And yeah, Ferrari have clearly not been able to replicate the pace that we saw in the second half of 2021. And it seems, obviously, we've mentioned a few times throughout this season that they seem to have gone backwards. Of course, Ferrari did win here last season with Jake Galloway. Of course, I alluded to a little bit earlier on about that final lap overtake that George Roque was involved in last season, which robbed him of a potential victory in 2021. It was, of course, Jake Galloway that was the one that overtook him last season at turn 1 on the final lap. And, well, it seems that so far, unless some luck happens, Rob, I think Ferrari are going to have to hope for a miracle if they want to make it 2 wins in a row here.
It's not going to happen, let's be honest.
Well, you never know, of course. Anything can happen in Grand Prix racing, and it usually does. As well, looks like Gal's having a little bit of a moment going through into the right-hander there as he approaches the chicane. Of course, in real life, that chicane is being phased out now, but of course we don't have... well, we do have a non-chicane version of this track, but it's from the past, of course, and don't think it would really stack up to modern-day racing, really. So I guess we'll just
probably
have to wait.
Not.
Guess we'll just have to wait, of course, in the future, perhaps, to see if there will be a non-chicane version of the track in the future, aka you could say a MotoGP version of this track, albeit without the curve. And maybe we'll have to wait for the new turn. What corner will it be now? The new turn 9 to be included on the racetrack. Really, that's still yet to be released on Grand Prix 4. I am aware recently there has been some problems over on Grand Prix Games recently when it comes to people posting forums. I don't know. I haven't been on the website for a little bit. I don't know if that's been fixed since then or what. But yeah, not really ideal for that site really, and it's meant that posting new mods on there has been a little bit of a problem for certain creators. So yeah, it's yeah, a little bit of problems over there, but hopefully they've sorted stuff out over there. But anyway, as De Rosa just came out of the chicane there whilst following one of the Renaults, I'm going to presume that's Prinning.
Here goes Gal down the smile.
It was in fact Quag that was in front of De Rosa there, because that's Perinin that we're looking at on the screen right now as one of the Hasses comes out on the track, but it looks like he's come out in traffic. Roque, meanwhile, has improved to do a 1 minute 20.624 as he remains at the top of the timing screens. Kloss, meanwhile, goes up into 7th in the Haas, and we might as well touch upon Haas at the moment, Rob, because although they've definitely got a better car compared to last season, they've definitely a solid midfield team this season, it's safe to say the last few races haven't been exactly the best for them. They've kind of faded away a little bit, it's fair to say, over the last few races.
Yeah, Haas is in real life well known for starting the season well, but then dropping back. This season, I think it's going much better than it did last season, but it's not exactly going to their plan. Given the pace they showed early on, they're kind of dropping off a little bit.
We'll have to see, of course, if they can regain that, of course, here in Spain. Currently, Kloss up in 7th place in this session, so who knows, really. Clearly, they still have some pace, but clearly it seems that maybe strategy is impeding them a little bit so far in 2022. Hence why we've seen some lower reaches of points races so far for Haas this season, particularly Motta, of course, who at the German Grand Prix was being held up in traffic, of course, and that definitely compromised his race, leaving Kloss the only one to try and salvage something out of that German Grand Prix, and Motta, of course, definitely wanting to move on from that race in Germany, as he'll be looking to bounce back here at the Spanish Grand Prix, as Perinin just goes around the right-hander there. As soon as we're approaching this chicane now then, as the flow breaker chicane, as George referred to it, of course, during the old highlights commentary, of course. Perinin now then just goes around the final turn, and now heading his way onto the pit straight now then, and Perinin does not improve. It looks like he's not on the pace at the moment, it seems. He's down in 16th at the moment in this session. Romain Quard, just looking at where he is at the moment, he's currently P10. So the Renaults seemingly doing what we've seen them do in previous session, of course, kind of being in the middle of the pack and then maybe turning up the wick when it comes to qualifying. Maybe they're looking at a very similar tactic here at the Spanish Grand Prix. Of course, the Spanish fans will, of course, be cheering Jesus Perinin on, because, of course, this is his home race. He's, of course, the only Spaniard on the grid, and looking to do well in front of his adoring fans here at Barcelona. But, yeah, of course, as mentioned, the last 3 races, he hasn't scored points, and he'll be determined to kind of end that streak if he can, really, as they're coming up to the back of an Aston Martin. It seems today, during this practice session, the Aston Martins have had a little bit of trouble when it comes to traffic, as meanwhile Chris Chatfield in the Ferrari goes up into 4th position. Is Perinin going to get by on Verderi this time by? No, he's not. As in fact, of course, in the last race as well, Verderi finally picked up his first points of the season. But again, it did involve a time penalty. It just seems that any time Verderi's been in a points-paying position by the end of the race, Rob, he always seems to end up with a time penalty. Except on this occasion, unlike the Chinese Grand Prix where he dropped out of the points thanks to his time penalty, he was able to keep some points, albeit he dropped a position as a result. So yeah, a little bit of a coincidence really that Verderi has ended up having a time penalty every time he's been in a points-paying position at the end of a race.
He needs to be more careful, in my opinion.
Yeah, indeed. And, of course, it seems that he has been, well, obviously the penalty that he got last race, of course, at the German Grand Prix was, of course, because he overtook under waved yellow flags. And, of course, the one in China was because he caused an accident with Patel and Byrne at the hairpin. So, that was kind of that, really, as Wilson tried to have a go at Perinen there. Clearly, Perinen's maybe on a bit of a high downforce, but he's actually coming into the pits this time by. And we'll be very interested to see what the degradation of the tyres are going to be like. Of course, they are the soft tyres we are using, but it'll be very interesting to see how quickly these tyres degrade, really, during the race, as Valdinger tries to find a way through on the Williams there. Williams, it's safe to say, despite the car they've got at the last race in Germany, they had a bit of a decent outing, both Griffiths and Sontag having a decent race last time out in Germany, despite the fact that Williams is still yet to score a point this season in 2022. And I guess for Jamie, a very encouraging race, considering the first few races of the season, it hasn't really been memorable races for him, with some people maybe questioning has he lost his form?
Well, in a car this bad, it's difficult to have any form in the first place. I think Griffiths just got unlucky to end up in a bad car for this year, because Williams have definitely taken a step backwards. They weren't good last season, but now they're even worse.
Indeed, as Sontag now then makes his way down the straight, as he now
I'll be right back.
Okie dokie, as the AlphaTauri is getting close behind Sontag at the moment, as Laura Chung gets into 15th place, slotting in front of Kirishima De Rosa. It looks like Chung also getting caught up by some traffic in the form of the Aston Martin. Currently, the Aston Martins lie 19th and 21st at the moment. Martins and Verderi at the moment, as Cooper has trouble trying to find a way through on the Williams of, I think that's Felix Sontag in front. And yes, it is his fellow compatriot that's in front at the moment, as we'll keep up trying maybe go for a move into turn 6. He is thinking about a move, but thinks better of it in the end there. Then it is possible to have some overtakes down to that corner. We have seen it in the past races here at Barcelona, but it's normally because of a tyre deg, really, and not because of a legit overtake, really. As Q-Pot now then trying to find a way through on Sontag into the hairpin, but not going to work out. Sontag shutting the door. Of course, Sontag did win here, of course, back in 2006 with Williams, of course. So obviously happy memories for those two. As Lopez, meanwhile, goes to the top of the timing sheet by 12 thousandths of a second, a 1 minute 20.612 for the two-time world champion. As Q-Pot makes his way through the chicane. Of course, Lopez took pole position last time out at the German Grand Prix, although he has had a little bit of a tendency so far during this qualifying session to make the odd mistake here and there and end up spinning the car. He did so at San Marino when it looked like he was going to snatch pole off of George Roque, but obviously lost it at the final corner, as a big lock up there for David Q-Pot going into the first corner. But luckily did not T-bone the side there of Felix Sontag. So very lucky that he was able to stop the car from doing that in time, as Q-Pot now then still can't find a way through on Felix Sontag, and definitely probably getting a little bit frustrated. He's stuck behind the Williams so far in this session, as meanwhile Bartosz Kloss gets up into 5th position, so he's been able to further improve on his time. Joseph Willows in the
What have I missed?
Just Q-Pot making the lock-up, but that's about it. But
okay.
Kloss, meanwhile, gets up into 5th, as now Q-Pot finally gets through on Felix Sontag there. As speaking of Williams, Griffiths has just got up into 19th position. But,
They're
yeah,
quite a way off the pace so far. It's surprising, given that car won a race.
Well, in fact, both Renaults looking a little bit off, because you can see Roman Quarg is actually down in 12th position. But I mentioned this a little bit earlier. They do seem to have a little bit of a tendency so far this season to not really push too much in practice, and they just seem to leave it until qualifying, really, to really turn the taps up. But whether or not...
Well, that is true.
Well, whether or not that this is the same case here at Barcelona, I don't think we'll find out until we actually get into the qualifying session a little bit later on, as Sontag just goes around the final turn. Of course, one here, as mentioned, in 2006, of course, with Williams, as it looks like the Alfa Romeo is about to get by him. I can just see on the mirror there on the right-hand side, but I don't think he's going to be replicating that anytime soon, given the car that he's currently in. As meanwhile, De Rosa is trying to get by on Martins into the first corner. And for McLaren, of course, we have mentioned this a few races, but it has been a very, very disappointing start for them this season. Of course, they obviously knew it was going to be a challenge with the new BMW power in their car. But last race, of course, Joseph Willows was looking set to possibly get a very good points haul in Germany before once again a retirement stopped him from doing that. And, well, it seems that in the last few races we've seen a McLaren pull off onto the side of the road. And, yeah, it's not been the way that McLaren were hoping for, hence why now they're down in 9th in the Constructors' Championship behind Alfa Romeo.
Yeah, indeed.
But De Rosa now then just trying to find a way through on the Aston Martin here, heading down towards the hairpin, but can't seem to get the move stick at the moment. De Rosa, of course, currently in P16 in the session. Teammate Willows up in 10th. Seems that Willows so far has had, in terms of the pace and the measure of De Rosa this season, it seems that he's been able to gel with the car a lot better than what De Rosa has so far this season. But really, as mentioned earlier, Williams could argue he should have had more points than what he's currently got so far on his points account. Both McLaren so far down his 17th and 18th so far in the Drivers'
Baldinger,
Championship.
meanwhile, improves, but still in P9.
Yep. As mentioned, 17th and 18th so far for the two McLaren drivers this season in the championship. So far, I think that is the lowest. Well, it's not the lowest that Joseph has been in a championship, but if we're talking about finishing position, I don't think Joseph will want to finish down in 17th, because that will definitely be the lowest ever position he's finished in a drivers' championship. I think the lowest he's ever finished, of course, is 9th in the championship, which was done by McLaren. As whoa, Mocho getting a little bit out of shape. Went a little bit out of shape going through into the chicane there. Looked like he caught the sausage curb a little bit there, Rob.
Yeah, indeed. And on topic of McLaren, this season is absolutely not going to plan for them. They've just switched to a brand new engine supplier, and they're still taking time to get adjusted. The engine may be good, but the rest of the car just appears to be woeful.
We've known that throughout the season, of course, McLaren have struggled with one-lap qualifying place. It seems that race pace, they seem okay, but yeah.
Speaking of McLarens, one of them just overtakes Sontag.
It'll be, I think, De Rosa, I think, because Willows is in the pits. So,
yeah.
So, anyway, as Sontag now they're making his way towards the chicane, as we have just under 20 minutes to go. So, with just under 20 minutes to go, this is what the field looks like then in this practice session. It's Lopez at the top, with Roque in second, Carr in third, followed by Byrne in fourth position, the championship leader, followed by Kloss in fifth, then it is Chatfield sixth, Gal seventh, with Kupok in eighth, then it is Baldinger in ninth, with Willows in 10th, then it is Galloway in 11th, followed by Quag in 12th, Mocho in 13th, Patel in 14th, followed by Chung in 15th, De Rosa in 16th, followed by Wilson 17th, Perrin in 18th, Griffiths 19th, Martins in 20th, Videri 21st, and Sontag in 22nd position. Currently the last 4 slots in this practice session being occupied by both Aston Martins and Williamses during this session, as the Renault tries to get by on one of the Williamses, that being Perrin on Sontag there, but failed to get by. So clearly, we talked about it earlier, and this could be something to keep an eye on, especially during qualifying, that I think traffic is definitely going to be a big thing around here.
Yeah, indeed. It's quite a short track, and lots of medium and low speed corners where the drivers can really lose off. So you want to be getting that clean air in qualifying and make sure nobody's impeding your lap, because usually when you fail to make an overtake here, you lose quite a lot of time.
Yep, indeed, and obviously we've seen it a few times during the session as well. Roque's having a little bit of a moment through to turn 3, and can he keep the car? Yes, he can. I thought for a minute there he was going to lose the back end, but nicely held there by George Roque there.
Yeah, big moment there. Had a nice little slide, but was able to correct it.
Luckily didn't send the car pitched all the way around, and was lucky to be able to save that, and luckily he didn't have anybody around him at the time, but that's definitely not going to help his first sector out at all. Currently second place in this session is George Roque, 12 thousandths off of Franco Lopez. Roque, it's safe to say his qualifying has been very, very strong this season, but of course he's still yet to get a victory with Red Bull, and who knows really? I wonder if he's getting a little bit of impatient trying to get a victory with this team.
It's only a matter of time given how good that car is. But the question is, how much time is it going to take?
I wonder indeed, as Rote now then just making his way out of the hairpin, as he will now make his way through into the section of corners, as Laura Chung meanwhile improves to go into 12th position, pushing this man, in fact, Quark, down to 13th, as he just has a double lock-up. Going through into the hairpin there, Galloway now gets into the top 10, so both Ferraris now into the top 10 in this session, as Galloway goes up into, well, exactly 10th position. Willow's now down outside of the top 10, so both McLarens now outside of the top 10 in this session, as now Quad just comes into the chicane now then, so through the left and right-hander he goes, as he will now make his way into the final corner, and onto the pit straight he will go now then. Quad across the line, I'm not expecting him to improve, and no he doesn't, stays where he is, which is P number 13 in this session. So far the Renault's not been able to light up the timing screen so far this session, as Rote now getting held up by one of the
And
Haas
of course, this track is quite notorious for its tire wear, and given that we're using soft tires, these will degrade rather quickly. So the only chance you have in an improvement is the first lap of your run. That's it, because after that, your tires are just gonna drop off. As Bernier improves, going up to 14th, just one place behind his teammate Quag.
Indeed, only 1,000th covering Chung and Quag meanwhile. But yeah, it is a tyre killer of a track, this place is. And of course, I think it would probably be very difficult if you were trying to go on a one-stop, especially with these tyres around here at Catalonia. So that's definitely one to keep an eye on in tomorrow's race, that is for sure. 66 laps of action around here at the Circuit de Barcelona Catalunya, as Rote now then makes his way
As
into
someone
the
who
chicane.
has been on a one-stop here in the past, I think I wouldn't recommend it.
Yep, indeed. As usually, it can be a well. It's not. It won't. Your race will more than likely not end very well, really. As now Chatfield just comes around turn number 3 there, as he will now make his way towards turn 4. As Griffiths now then down on his personal best at the moment. Griffiths currently 19th at the moment, ahead of Sontag. Seems that compared to his teammate, Griffiths has started to pick up the pace as of recently. As mentioned earlier, he has had quite a lot of criticism about his driving as of late. As Verderi, just like what we saw with Quag a little bit earlier on, just has a double lock-up going through into the hairpin. As Verderi now then making his way through into the right-hander. As so far, only Kloss and Valdinger are the only two drivers in the pits at the moment, as Verderi now then makes his way into the chicane through the left and right-hander now then he goes, as he will soon be crossing the line very soon in that car, heading his way onto the pit straight. I'm not expecting an improvement from the Italian. He will now cross the line with the Lamborghini just behind, no improvement, and stays in 21st position at the moment out of 22. 20th and 21st so far for the two Aston Martins in this session, as Verderi just goes around the first few turns on the track. Car now then trying to look at the other Aston Martin into the right-hander and gets through pretty easily, possibly due to the fact that both of them have got the same engine in the back, both of them running the Mercedes engine. Sakar now then just making his way through the left-hander there then, as meanwhile Mocho gets into the top 10 in the Haas, so both Haas's are now into the top 10. Looks like Mocho actually had a little bit of slipstream for the McLaren. In fact, Mocho currently in the McLaren sandwich so far in this session, with Willows in front and De Rosa behind him, as now coming around turn 3 we go, as the Italian now then possibly trying to see if he can get some slipstream off of the Haas in front, and well, 65,000 up, it's definitely helping him at the moment, as but we're hoping he doesn't get held up too much by his teammate and Mocho in front of him, so that's obviously one to keep an eye on there.
Yeah, indeed.
And now heading our way down into turn 6 and 7. Let's see if he can keep this up going into the middle sector now then. Or won't, because Q-Pot now then is once again stuck behind a Williams. Once again in this session. And not able to get the move stuck there. I think this time he's stuck behind Griffiths, if I'm not mistaken. As Sontag coming down the hill. So, yep, that does confirm that is Griffiths. As Sontag actually up on his personal best in the first sector. Has got nobody around him. So, he should be able to complete this lap with no issues whatsoever, providing he doesn't make a mistake.
Let's stay on board with him.
Well, if the camera allows us to. 7/10 up in the middle sector. So, you could actually
that might not be enough to actually improve, to be honest.
Well, he's 7/10 up on his personal best. So, but probably not enough to get out of 22nd position, as it looks like Mocho is now coming to the pits because he's no longer around where the McLarens are, who are just going around the first few turns. But yeah, as De Rosa now then making his way through the long swooping right-hander, he will go. As De Rosa now then down on his personal best in the first sector. Sontag actually goes up to 19th now with that lap. So now the two Aston Martins are occupying the last two positions in this session. And are coming out of the left-hander now then we will go. As Galloway now then just coming out into the hairpin there. As currently we have just under 12 minutes to go in this session. But yeah, Lamborghini, might as well mention them, specifically for Laura Chung, because of course she's finished in the points in the last 6 races, and considering the Lamborghini has gone backwards, she has been very, very consistent this season, so who knows really, could we be looking at 7 races in a row where she could get points. Of course, she has won here in the past, back in 2019 when she was driving for Ferrari, so she does have some good memories around this track, and so we'll see if she can continue the streak of points, because so far that has definitely helped Lamborghini in the Constructors' Championship, and I guess in a way eased the pain of their car going backwards this season.
Yeah, Lamborghini aren't looking as fresh as they were last season, and their pace seems to have just dropped off a little bit.
As De Rosa gets by on his teammate there with no issues whatsoever, so De Rosa gets by on Willows into the first corner. As currently still outside the top 10 are the two McLaren drivers at the moment, as De Rosa now then is 76,000 down, sorry, 74,000, sorry, I should say, in the first sector compared to his personal best. Looks like Verderi's once again going to have a double lockup into the hairpin there, so it seems like he's struggling a little bit to slow the car down into that hairpin there, as currently down in last place is the Italian, who of course moved over from Alfa Romeo last season after what was a disastrous 2021 season, and although he's been able to get a couple of points on the board, well, he did have points last season, but it wasn't too many. So far, I think it's safe to say that Verderi's probably maybe starting to regret maybe his choice of moving to Aston Martin, because I think he thought that that Aston would actually progress in this season, but clearly it seems they've gone backwards. Same, you could also say as well Alfa Romeo have as well, but I don't think to the extent of what Aston Martin have this season.
No, Aston were looking thereabouts last season, but now they've just completely fallen off course, and they're lucky they're still faster than Williams.
Yes, indeed, and
as for Federi, I don't really think he had much of a choice, given that people who are performing much better for him were gunning for his seat. I think he just took the decision to go for a safer option, even though it would be slower.
Perhaps indeed, but I think that also did come with risk when he went with Aston Martin, because of course there were obviously other drivers who were competing for that seat, including Roland Motrin, of course. But he was able to get one of the seats in the end, was Andrea Verderi, and of course Motrin ended up losing his seat at Aston Martin.
Of course, probably not everybody noticed the downward trend Aston had as Byrne improves on his lap, but yeah, we saw clearly in the sign-ups Aston Martin on a downward trend, and Federi still decided to go for them, so it's his choice, but you have to wonder if it was really the best one.
Yeah, I wonder indeed, and it'd be interesting to see what would happen with Aston Martin next season, of course, if they are, you know, if they're going to be able to improve on this, or if they're going to continue to slump down the field. I mean, it'd be a complete contrast to what they're doing in real life, of course, where they're actually near the front now. But that's real life, not fantasy era OC here. But anyway, as De Rosa crosses the line, does not improve and stays where he is at the moment, which is currently P17 in this session, as his teammate Willow starting to drop back a little bit down that straight. Lopez currently at the top, obviously not able to improve as he got held up there by the Renault. Currently 12,000 separating both Lopez and Roque at the moment, as Lopez just goes around the first few turns on the racetrack, is now coming around turn 4 he goes, as whoa, looks like Quag's having a bit of a low through.
He's sliding there, Quag.
That was
keeps
very
it on
close
the track though.
It was very close indeed for the Frenchman, as now coming around turn 4 we go, as now making his way down towards turn 5 as Chung now gets herself into the top 10 in the Lamborghini, goes up into 8th position. Patel currently still down in 16th position. And I think Lamborghini did get double points last time out of Germany, if I'm not mistaken, with Patel getting some strong points. So far it has been, we talked about this a few times, a very tough start to the season for Rahul Patel, mainly because of the amount of accidents that he was involved in the first few races. So far he's kept himself clean in the last couple of races, but whether he can keep that up or not is going to be a question. Yeah, it seems that things are starting to go in the right direction for Patel, and that's despite the fact that at Hockenheim, of course, he did actually get a very good grid position at Germany, but of course was on a one-stop, but was able to make it somewhat work to the point where he was able to finish, I think it was 7th in the end in that race. So, yeah, he was able to make the one-stop work, but yeah, he definitely needs to keep this up, because so far it hasn't been the best of seasons for Rahul Patel this season.
Nope, his teammate has had the measure of him, and he just needs to get a break because his start was very weak. He needs to catch his lucky break sooner rather than later, because otherwise Chung is just gonna pull away from him in the team battle.
Indeed so, as we have just under 6.5 minutes to go in this session. So this is what the leaderboard looks like as Motto gets by on a Williams into the hairpin there. So Lopez at the top now with Roke in 2nd, Carr in 3rd, Byrne in 4th, Kloss in 5th, Chatfield 6th, Gall in 7th with Chung in 8th, and it's Kupok 9th, Valdinger in 10th, followed by Mocho in 11th, Galloway in 12th, Willows in 13th, Quark 14th, Perinen in 15th, Patel 16th, DeRosa 17th, Wilson in 18th, Sontag 19th, Griffiths is in 20th, with Martins in 21st, and Videri in 22nd position. So far, the Renaults seem to be a little bit off the pace so far in this session, but whether they're holding something back for qualifying, we shall have to wait and see, as we have just under 6 minutes to go now then in this practice session before we get on to the qualifying session, which will of course determine the grid for tomorrow's Spanish Grand Prix here at Barcelona.
Yeah, indeed. I think it should be an interesting qualifying session, of course. Judging by the time so far, the Red Bull versus Mercedes battle is looking well and truly alive, and it should be a very interesting battle for pole.
Indeed so, and so far, I think obviously last race Lopez took the pole position, but yeah, it's obviously been a little bit, I'd say, equal between Red Bull and Mercedes when it comes to qualifying pace, and hopefully we're in for a very, very long battle in this championship between the pair of them. And obviously the drivers in question looking to see if they could be the one to take Franco Garber's crown, who is of course not driving in the top class anymore, of course. Retired at the end of last season, did the reigning champion, and then making a career in DTM, which so far hasn't been the best of starts for him so far in that championship. Jake Galloway went up to 5th whilst I was rambling on there. Roke coming back into the pits. Now I wonder if that's going to be his final runs in this session, of course, given how much time there is left on the clock. Currently getting held up by Armar Cohen.
Probably.
Being held up by Armar Carr, in fact, who's currently 3rd in this session, as Roke trying to still find a way through on Carr, despite the fact that he's coming into the pits at the end of this lap. There are currently 5 cars in the pit lane at the moment. Lopez, Kloss, Chatfield, Kupok and Valdinger at the present moment, as we ride on board with Kirishima DeRosa in the McLaren, as he now crosses the line, and no improvement for him. He stays where he is for the time being, as he will be coming into the pits at the end of
something, and I mean, Ferrari are looking very, very solid here, it seems.
Which is a little bit surprising, really, because it seems that we talked about this during the season, but it seems that they've got a better engine compared to last season, because it seems to be quite powerful down the straight. But it just seems like, unlike last season, where obviously their strength was on the chassis, hence why they did well on tracks like this, for example. They seem to struggle on chassis tracks, but clearly they seem to find some pace around here so far. Whether they can keep that up in qualifying, though, that is going to be another question.
Yeah, indeed. Practice and qualifying can usually tell some very different stories. So, just because a team is quick in practice, it doesn't really mean anything unless they have the way to back it up.
Of course, they run higher fuel loads, of course, in practice. Obviously, they run lighter fuel loads during qualifying, so that could make all the difference, really. As now coming around the next section of corners, as they now make their way through into the left and right-hander goes Kirishima De Rosa. Of course, he's coming into the pits at the end of this lap. Perrin trying to find a way through on a Williams there into the hairpin, but can't seem to get the job done at the moment. And so far, Renault not showing a lot of pace in this practice session. Again, they could be holding something back for qualifying. We'll have to wait and see. As Valdinger is also trying to get by the other Williams, that being Jamie Griffiths. So far, the Alfa Romeo is currently 11th and 18th so far in this session. So we'll still see what sort of pace they'll be able to carry when we go into qualifying, of course, as Valdinger just comes out of the hairpin there. The top three are now all in the pits, and I do wonder if that is the last we're going to see of them.
That should be it for them.
This session. We shall see, of course, because we've still just got over 2 minutes to go in this session, as finally Perinen gets by on Sontag there into the first corner, just as Sontag is actually pitting at the end of this lap. Is Valdinger also going to get by on the other Williams here into the hairpin? He's going to try, but Griffiths staying firm on that regard into the hairpin there. And so far, Valdinger struggling to find a way through Jamie Griffiths' Williams at the present moment. As obviously, speaking of Williams, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, Sontag is coming into the pits at the end of this lap there, as we have just under 1 3/4 minutes to go now then in this practice session. So we'll soon be coming towards the end of the session very, very soon. As we look behind, there is an Aston and a Ferrari currently scrapping at the moment, that being Jake Galloway, and it looks like he's going to get by on Verderi into the hairpin. No, he's not. Verderi staying firm on that regard as well, a little bit similar to what we saw with Jamie Griffiths a little bit earlier on as well. But anyway, as I don't know if we're going to stay on board now with the drivers for the remainder of the session or not, because we're getting close to that point. Quarg is going to give himself one more lap. Maybe we will see maybe a little bit of a push lap from the Renault at the end, as Kloss is starting his lap as well. Martin's across the line, no improvement, stays where he is, 4 seconds off in fact, so not having the best of laps there was Martin. I wonder if he made a mistake during that lap. Verderi doesn't improve whilst he was busy fighting with Jake Galloway there for that lap, as Willows doesn't improve on his lap. De Rosa just getting some mileage in the car as he just came out of the garage. Kupak up on his personal best, and he goes into 10th position with that lap, so keeping the AlphaTauri into the top 10 as a result. Speaking of AlphaTauri, there is Miklos Gal, who's currently in 8th position at the moment, as Gal now then comes across the line and he does not improve. Byrne across the line in the Red Bull, the championship leader, does not improve and stays in 4th. Wilson will just get one more flying lap in before the session comes to a close. As speaking of Alfa Romeos, here's a teammate, Bence Valdinger, who's just coming out of the chicane, making his way around that final turn now then as he makes his way onto the straight. And what sort of lap time is he able to produce on this occasion? Across the line, no improvement, a 1:22 on that occasion. Lopez and Carr will actually get one more lap in fact. Roke has just gone out, but I think he's only gone out just for a mileage run. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and now 1 and 0. And the checkered flag is now out. That is the end of the session. I think Carr was the last one to cross the line. As Chatfield now then just making his way around the final corner, and across the line will go the Ferrari driver, and he doesn't improve and stays in 7th place. Roman Quarg across the line, he will go, doesn't improve, stays in 14th. So not the best of sessions for Renault. Kloss goes up into 5th place, a big improvement there for the Polish driver. Jesus Perinen across the line, he will go, no improvement. Johannes Martins, no improvement from him either. Joseph Willows just comes out of the final turn in the McLaren, as he will now cross the line himself. Across the line he will go, and he does not improve, as Galloway is obviously finished for the day. He's gone back into the pits. Kupak does not improve, as De Rosa just getting some mileage in his car. Here is Miklos Gal in the second AlphaTauri, as he will now come around the final turn onto the pit straight. He will go, and no improvement I don't think is going to be the case for Gal. No, it's not. Stays in 8th. Byrne finished for the day, well, for this session I should say, not for the day, because of course we've got qualifying a little bit later on. Wilson just negotiating the final chicane now then. She now makes her way into the final turn, and onto the pit straight she will go, and across the line will go the Alfa Romeo driver. Across the line, no improvement. Bence Valdinger, across the line he will go, and no improvement for him. Lopez doesn't improve and stays on 1 minute 20.612. Carr, the last driver to cross the line, no improvement, and that's the session done with Lopez, Roke and Carr, your top 3. So as you said a little bit earlier, Rob, possibly looking at another close fight between Mercedes and Red Bull.
Yeah, so it seems. You can't really tell them apart at the moment, it looks like.
Indeed so. Well, we're just going to take a brief pause for the moment. Of course, we're just going to end the stream and then come back with a fresh one to start with qualifying. But in the meantime, I've been JW97, he's been Rob, and we'll see you in just a little bit for the qualifying session. See you in a bit.
Yes, see you.